So everything in the image should be kind of compositionally going into what you're trying to show. Like if you have something which is really detailed here and then like something which is equally as detailed, equally as bathed in light, the eye doesn't know where to go.
Hello everybody, Lamar Bryant here from Victory 3D Final Render, and today I have another guest with us today. His name is Blake Rottinger. He worked on titles such as Spider-Man Miles Morales and Tomb Raider. Please welcome Blake Rottinger, or Rottinger?
Rottinger, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It's a hard one.
Yeah. So let me introduce you guys to our guest, Blake Rottinger. So, Blake, tell us about your journey, about how you got here today, so our audience can know who you are and what you do.
First off, thank you for having me on your show. I always like to, if there's a chance to sort of help students or whatever, I like to try to take it. So it's good that what you guys are doing. How do I go? So, same old story as everyone else. I liked drawing when I was a kid. I kind of got maybe a bit more serious about it, like when I was like 16. And then I figured out that concept art was a thing when I was maybe like 18 or something like that. So I was just finishing high school. And then I had to kind of pick where I was going to go after that, like university. Because I was 18 and it's hard to distinguish what to do when you're that young, and no one really you have to like choose your whole life at that point, or they expect you to. So I went into a visual art university. Bear in mind, when I say visual arts, it's like galleries and stuff, like traditional painting, sculpture and stuff. So that was maybe not the right call. I should have maybe went into something a bit more like design. But it did give me a lot of time to practice concept art because the course was like really easy. I don't want to say that like I'm the best or anything. It was just an easy course. So for like 3 years, when I was like 18 to 21, I just practiced like every day.
Yeah, how much time you put into that? Like how many hours a day?
Man, like I would say I was, practicing it at least every day. And I'm pretty sure that's not even an exaggeration, for 3 years. And back then, not that I'm super old or anything, but there's not the stuff that is out there today, like Gumroad and all that sort of stuff. So I kind of only I had some books. So I'm self-taught though, because, my university didn't really teach anything like that. So I'm self-taught. And there was like some stuff on YouTube, So maybe I wasn't the fastest when I was learning because I kind of had to figure out a lot of stuff out, just myself. Right. Now it's way better. You've got like Gumroad tutorials and what you guys are doing. So yeah, finished uni and I'd been practicing for 3 years or whatever it was. And it wasn't like professional. It wasn't like really good or anything, but maybe like, 6 months, 7 months after university, I got my first sort of AAA gig. I had done some freelance stuff before, and that was with, Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal. And I guess that's just sort of the basic rundown of how I got into concept art. I've always loved movies, loved games. And it was like a mind-blowing, thing to know that I could do art in games. And so I was just like, well, obviously that's what I'm going to do. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah. Now, it actually goes into my first question. And this is more of a, like, the basics. So I think that the basics is the most basic, or learning the basics is the most that any artist should learn. So as far as the principles of design, how important is it for an artist such as yourself or even other people to actually learn when they're doing either their concept art or even their 3D art?
How important is design in terms of just, everyday sort of stuff? I would say, especially for work, it's the prime sort of thing, because it's the most important, I would say. At the end of the day, we're not creating art to go into galleries. Yeah, it looks good and it can look good, and if you want it to look good, that's how to. But at the end of the day, it is a product. We are creating art for a reason, to a brief. I think the term is like I'm not sure if this is true, but I think technically we're like artisans opposed to artists. An artisan is like someone which is given a brief and you have to execute on that brief, for a reason. An artist is like you just create art just for fun, or like, to sell the art itself. So concept art there's a reason why it's there. You know what I mean? It's the finished product isn't the art. And I think a lot of maybe students forget that the finished product is the game, the finished product is the movie, the finished product is whatever it is. So yes, you have to make it look good because it has to look good so it can display what you're trying to show. But if you're given a brief and it looks good, but it doesn't answer any questions which have been asked in terms of design, then it's kind of useless. You know what I mean? So I would say design definitely is the forefront. Your personal work, you don't have to. You do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. Maybe when you're beginning, maybe try to practice design. But at this point in my career, like, yes, I am still trying to practice design. You're always learning, you're always practicing. But like, sometimes I just like to create pieces of work that have nothing to do with design. I just like make a pretty picture. That's all right.
Now, as in terms of like having like to preach, like having a focal point, or like just to make sure that my viewers' eyes are looking at a certain part of my art. Do you think that as far as like just like overall making the art versus having a focal point within my art to actually tell my viewer, hey, I want you to focus in on this part of the picture to draw your attention?
So if you want someone, if anyone's looking at a picture and you want them to look at a specific thing, there's a bunch of different art, type of techniques that you use. One of them is high contrast. Maybe like the focal point is bathed in light and everything else is dark, for an example. You know what I mean? The other thing is called detail density, really, which is kind of like the place where you want to look at. You put a lot of work into that place. You want like the detail of that thing to maybe be even a little bit more than the surrounding areas. Because when your eye is looking at something like, straight on, the thing in your peripheral, its detail is lost a little bit. You can see it, but it's not really there. So you're kind of trying to emulate what the eye does naturally, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And also just sort of, there's a lot of techniques, I guess, like, shapes, using light to create shapes and like, let's say, so everything in the image should be kind of compositionally going into what you're trying to show. Like if you have something which is really detailed here and then like something which is equally as detailed, equally as bathed in light, the eye doesn't know where to go. It kind of looks at both of them, doesn't know which way to go. So you need to kind of figure out what you want to do, figure out what your focal point is, and everything needs to then complement that. So that's a few sort of, ways that you can help your focal point or like to tell the audience where to look. But yeah, there's sort of like, there's other stuff too, which, you can research. It's kind of like art fundamentals. old masters paintings, all that studying stuff like that, how they do it. And there's I'm still learning a lot of stuff about that myself. Just because I was self-taught, I didn't really go to a school which taught all that stuff, so I'm kind of catching up. Yeah.
I'm more of a digital painter. I mean, I don't like traditional painting because, if I mess up, I could go ahead and use the Photoshop or
sure.
or Core Painter to make the changes that I need to make, and also further enhance it. If you mess up, you got to find ways to cover the mistake. So I mean, there's a creative point between doing both. I mean, you have a little more control over which one you want to go with. But you got to be more creative when you're doing physical painting because you're trying to figure out ways to cover up the mistake so that way the audience don't see it. Or if that mistake ended up being a plus, they say, all right, this is not bad. Let me go ahead and run with this. So yeah.
I guess with traditional painting, you have to be a bit more methodical because you can't just make, you can, but a bunch of mistakes. And then, as you said, you have to cover it up. You have to figure out a way around it. At least in digital painting, you can just sort of throw a bunch of crap on the screen and you're like, oh, whatever, just Alt F4. Sorry, not Alt F4, Control Z. Don't turn off your computer.
Yeah. Or don't let it crash. Or, auto
careful kids.
Hopefully, auto recovery comes in. So now, I've been looking at your art station and still gets me your work, your concept work. Now, the question I pose to you is, what percentage of your work is actually 2D versus 3D?
So, most of not all of it, but I would say on my ArtStation portfolio right now, back when I was working on Miles Morales and the first Spider-Man for PS4, I was tasked a lot with painting over 3D. So here's the thing, I guess. I don't create my own 3D for work, really, at all. It's not my job to do so, at least in where I am with, this company. I've been working with Insomniac Games just for 4 years now, you know what I mean? I'm working on Spider-Man 2 right now, and then, will be for a little while, at least for one while. So when I was working on those two ones, I was mostly given 3D bases to work off because the game designers and those sort of people in that thing, they've already figured out, where the player has to go, where all that sort of stuff. So they've already got a block in, just simple 3D blocks. So a lot of that work is painted over 3D. I personally try to really make it look like you can't see any of the 3D anymore at the end. That's my personal style, or that's what I'd like to do. And then with some personal work, I don't use 3D at all. I rarely use 3D, which might be a bit of a surprise to some people. But when I'm doing personal work, I actually don't. I like to not use 3D sometimes. It depends. It really depends on the context of what you're trying to do. If you're going to paint an open field with grass and a guy in it, why would you need 3D? But if you're painting something that's quite architecturally, complex, then then 3D is pretty useful for something like that. But my personal work, sometimes I feel like 3D is too technical and I lose my passion for it when I'm working because it's hard enough sometimes to get the motivation to do personal work when you've been doing commercial work for so long. I actually lost that for a little while. I didn't do any personal work for a year because I kind of just not have the time, but it was hard to be working all day and then, in the afternoon or at night when you want to relax, then continue painting. But I'll tell you this for a bit of advice, I think, for people, which kind of came really good for me. You get caught up a little bit in creating your next big piece, or like something that is designed, it has to add to your portfolio, all this sort of stuff. And then I just sort of thought one day, it's like, wait a minute, I can paint whatever the heck I want. You know what I mean? And that kind of just, I don't know, it seems like a simple thing to think. But for me, I was like, it doesn't have to, like, if I want to do fan art of something, I will. If I want to do something of something else, I will. And it just sort of got me to get my passion back for it. And I think if you want to last a long time, there are some people who don't, I suppose, but I think, this is what I think. If you want to last a long time, you have to keep thinking about why you got into it in the first place. It's like this passion of these worlds and making these games and stuff. And if you lose that, it becomes too much of the job, I think. So as I was saying, to my previous point, when I'm creating personal work, I don't want to sometimes 3D, I'm not very good at it, so it slows me down. And so when I'm creating something, I kind of just want to start, because I don't want to lose that motivation to do it. It's a balancing act, I suppose. I'm not sure. I think that, yeah. I went on a tangent there. Sorry.
Okay, because you kind of answered the next question I was about to ask you, but I was going to ask you this one here, because you said, like, sometimes you use motivation. And how would you actually get or rekindle that motivation to do personal work after, constantly working on projects or going to work for so long and then not having the motivation to actually do personal work? So how can you actually rekindle that motivation? Because I know that a lot of people, like even for myself at one point, lose motivation to do like a personal work because like at a certain point, work does pretty much, because personal work or regular work wears down on us mentally, and it's kind of hard to actually sit down in front of a computer at home and actually do the personal work. Yeah.
So this kind of comes into effect, I think, a bit maybe further into your career, I would say. Like, at the beginning when you're a kid, I went, you go every day, and you've still got this passion. But once you do get into the industry and you are working every day, it's harder and harder for some people. Some people just, they do everything. But it gets harder and harder to find the time, find the motivation for personal work. And as I sort of said before, think about why you wanted to get here in the first place. What inspired you in the first place? Games that you like, stuff like that. And then sometimes I would actually say personal work, don't force it. Don't just feel like you have to create a bunch of work to be relevant and to keep up with algorithms and all this stupid stuff. I don't think that, yes, have an online presence, but Christ, you don't have to sell your soul, to post every day. What helped me was thinking about what really got me into it in the first place, and not really caring. And I say all this as a person, who's been in the industry for a while. I have a portfolio. I have clients. I'm getting jobs, stuff like that. So I can really just relax and do whatever I want in my personal work. And then just, as I was saying, don't force it. Let it come. And if you don't feel like doing it, if you're trying to force yourself to do it, it's probably not going to come out as good anyway. So I would wait for that passion to come, and but when it does, hit it hard. As I was saying, sometimes it's to a detriment to myself. I start too fast. I just want to get it on the page and stuff, and then I have to go back and fix a bunch of mistakes. which I'm getting better at, hopefully. But yeah, and another thing maybe to rekindle that, to do personal work, get away from the computer. Honestly, get outside, go for a walk, hang out with people, because you're not going to find inspiration to do stuff just sitting in a room all day. Get outside, do other stuff, have other hobbies.
Now, for on my end, as far as like a side hobby, because I usually do some photography, so like taking pictures of different environments. Because sometimes when I go on trips and go to different places, like taking pictures of other places I've been to can actually spark creativity. How can I, it's like I would say like more of as a doing both 2D and 3D, and this is for people who are doing 3D because they have to work with like cameras and angles and getting some type of shots in certain places. And but by having the camera in front of you, you get to see from that lens as far as how can you shoot something that has not been seen before from a different angle. So, yeah. I mean, like to me, I prefer to have hobbies that can complement what I do. I don't know if it's like that's the same for you or not.
I think I'm the opposite actually. See, my hobbies mostly it's like tinkering with my motorbike, stuff like that. I love motorbikes. Going for rides on motorbikes, something kind of stuff that doesn't have anything to do with it, which is weird. But I can definitely see your point as to how that.
I mean, yeah. And sometimes, like for me, I like to tinker with a computer. So, like, try to make some enhancements to it. But
cool.
But it's everybody has their niche, so it actually allows them to actually do something that is like outside what they normally do. So, but I do agree with you. I mean, because getting out in the world, because that's one thing that we have like a similarity to is going out into the world and not being in a room, and you'd be surprised what can spark what your creativity can do just by being outdoors. So
yes, well said. So that's what I wanted to get to, and you said it way better.
So now I want to talk to you more about your concept, because I know on your portfolio you have like different forms of art on your art station. Now, which kind of concept art do you have to do the most? Because like between medieval, sci-fi, modern,
So
which one you like doing the most?
Yeah, which one do I like doing the most? Or which one do I do the most?
Oh, which one you like doing the most?
I kind of like doing. Oh man, it changes here and there because once you're doing too much of one thing, then you want to do the other. But so at least for work, I've been doing a lot of modern day, sort of stuff, real world sort of stuff. So in my personal work, and I've been doing that for like 3 years, 4 years. So in my personal work, I kind of try to I kind of go for more organic stuff, and things that maybe a bit more fantasy. And I do enjoy that quite a lot. I enjoy sci-fi a lot, but I suck at it. So I kind of don't do it for my personal work as much, but like I'm trying to get better. But I still I quite enjoy doing grounded real world sort of stuff that maybe with like a slight twist, like a fantasy twist, a sci-fi twist. I love fantasy stuff just because it's a lot of like, when you're working with like architecture and stuff, it all has to be like super on point. Otherwise it looks stupid. But at least with organic stuff like a forest, you have like so much more like breathing room of just putting things together. Yeah.
So now, as far as your concept, well, I'll say projects goes, which project are you most excited? Well, let me say that again. which project do you like working on the most out of all the game projects you worked on thus far?
So I've been working on Spider-Man 2 for a long time, and I would say, like, yeah, it has been really fun because I've gotten to do a lot more blue sky stuff, which I guess just stuff that trying to figure out what this place is supposed to look like. Like initially, you have a lot of freedom, so that's been really fun. I did really enjoy Miles Morales just because like of the hip hop influences and like the cool, interesting like colors and stuff that I got to do. That was really fun. Yeah, I think I would have enjoyed working on Tomb Raider more if I didn't suck so bad back then. That was like my first gig, and looking back, like it was such a cool project. I wish I could kind of like go back and do it better now. But at the beginning, it was my first project. I was so stressed about like, not getting, as in, I was so stressed about just trying to do a good job because it was like, yeah, so like green. So yeah, that would have been so much fun, I think, if I knew what I was doing a bit more.
Ain't nothing better than your first. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
So now, as far as now dealing with the Marvel, like all the Spider-Man games you worked on, when it coming down to doing the concept art for it, now I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, but how much creative freedom do you actually have when creating the environments versus staying true to the Marvel Cinematic world? Because I know that with Marvel they actually have like a certain level degree of like things you need to follow.
Like obviously I'm not going to talk about anything that I'm working on now, but back in the first sort of game, Miles Morales, the stuff that did involve the Marvel universe, it is a lot more stricter. Yeah, it really is, because you have to, we have to figure out which is cool with Insomniac games, but then it also has to be approved by a whole other type of people at Marvel. So, like when we were designing, Doctor Strange's, building in New York, or like Avengers Tower and stuff, it went through like way more iterations. And kind of figuring out that balance is kind of like, like I do, back with that sort of stuff, I do have creative freedom, but it is a lot more limited. Like, Insomniac games or like the people, my boss, the art director, they kind of know what we need. And I don't stray too far. As I was saying before, blue sky stuff, you can really like kind of, figure it out, like you've got a lot more creative freedom. And then when it gets to more like further into the project, a lot of the times, at least with my experience, it gets a bit more stricter and stricter. Just like I guess with anything, because you know what you're doing at that point. You kind of figure out the initial designs, and then it's kind of more production stuff, which is like, all right, you have to go through every single room and figure out what every single room looks like, and where everything is, and what this cabinet looks like. A bunch of stuff like that. So it gets a bit, further into the project. Normally, it gets, more strict. I think I answered your question.
So just to confirm, because you do have the creative freedom, but would you say you submit like a concept for it to get approved first, and then
most of the time.
And if they do like it, like they'll say, well, we like the overall concept, can you make some enhancements to actually cater towards this particular scene?
Yeah. So it's like I send something off, like I get the brief,
Yes.
tell me what it needs to be in it, send something off, like a first pass, and then they, most of the time, rarely, it happens, but rarely they come back, they're like, easy, done, you know what I mean? Most of the time they come back, they're like, all right, yeah, like, this is cool, except we have to change this, this, and this, and this, or like just this and this to change this texture here, like we have to figure out something else, like another sort of design here, and then make those changes, send it back. Sometimes more changes. Like, okay, yeah, that's cool. Change that and that. Send it back. You kind of like, you just sort of changing enough so it just gets, better and better, I suppose. And then if it was like sort of that marble stuff, which kind of crosses over, then it gets sent off to them and then they have changes to make. But yeah, you rarely get anything first try. At least I do. I do sometimes, but it's like it's kind of impossible sometimes because at the end of the day, it's how people interpret things differently. But that's our job. As sometimes it's our job to figure out all this stuff before it gets taken down to the 3D sort of guys who then have to build it because they don't have like time to start figuring out a bunch of what the cabinet looks like.
Now, as it relates towards the 3D aspect of it, because I know you use, as far as work related wise, Maya, correct?
Not so much anymore. I've actually been using a bit more Blender.
Blender, okay. So when it comes down to receiving work from like a Blender, now, like, cause I knew because they have paint overs. I remember if I'm saying it correctly.
Yeah.
So in your line of work, you usually do like all the paint overs, like when the actual the art team forward you like a scene, and then pretty much you got to put your touches on it to actually give it a little 2D feel. So now, when it comes down to that, or anything similar to that, what hurdles do you have to face when doing paint overs with environments, no matter it's dealing with the Tomb Raider title or with the Spider-Man title that you worked on?
Tomb Raider was such a long time ago. I think I got kind of like minimal 3D back then, and I wasn't very good. So there's a bit of a technique to painting over 3D. Weirdly enough, it's kind of similar to traditional painting, where you work from the back to the front. If that makes sense, you kind of go from the background to the front. And so you get a lot better at painting over 3D. And yeah, I guess hurdles for, I guess a hurdle, which is that, it's a lot more, stringent, I suppose. And then let's say you get, oh, actually, no, this is a big hurdle. I'm at this. This sucked. So I was really, really bad at painting like three-quarter down views on things, like just this overview sort of thing. Normally I'd kind of go for a lower camera angle, but if you're given a 3D piece, sometimes they give you a lot of different, screenshots of the thing, and you can kind of pick which one you like to then work on, because you know how you work. But sometimes there's like this one view, this is it, you got to paint over this, and you're just like, oh no, like I suck at this, but you got to do it. So it's practice. Anything in this industry is practice. But that was a hurdle for sure. Like painting over views which are not comfortable with painting over, but it needs to be done because you need to show everything that needs to be shown. All the information has to be into this one image. That's sometimes a little bit hard to get like a bunch of different ideas and information in one image. So then that can just go over to the next person and they have everything they need. I try to make my job easy. Like I try to make it so that whoever gets my work, their job is easier. That's always a goal. You don't want to give anyone more work than they need to.
Yes. But I mean, technically in any form of like I consider this, well, we're in the entertainment business, and there's no such thing as too much work, because we're always going to get more work than we're supposed to. But that is the line we're passionate about, and I do agree with you. So, but yeah, there's nothing getting around that part.
At least in like the pipeline, if I give something to and it goes through a 3D artist, I don't want them to be like, I can't even make out what this is because it's too dark or something like that. Like sometimes you actually have to make some compromises here and there. It's like, maybe this would look better artistically wise if you went down this path, but as I said before, the art is not the end product. Everything has to be clear, so that anyone could take it and then use it.
So, all right, and going to the next question within this, right? Now, we're working on the Spider-Man Marvel universe. Like, what was the extensiveness, as people say it, in terms of maintaining a look and feel of the intellectual properties, or any differences that are in the Marvel games that you had to adapt to?
I think my style, in terms of my art, kind of lends itself anyway to that sort of stuff. It's kind of like, so it's not like, that's kind of maybe why I was hired in the first place, because an art director can see your type of style and that if you'll fit the project. That's kind of, I'm never hired to do like super cartoony, painterly stuff. You know what I mean? Because that would just be silly. I have none of that in my portfolio. So my style lends itself anyway. It's kind of like realistic, I guess, but with a little, I don't know. It's hard to just describe your own style. Like a little bit of crazy color, I don't know, a bit less realistic. So yeah, I kind of just did my own work, just that I would sort of, do anyway, and just try to fit the design briefs, and it kind of just worked out. Like my personal style is just sort of, it kind of molds anyway. And that's kind of sometimes an art director's sort of job, is to find people who'll just do that anyway. That makes sense.
Yes, it does.
I mean, I'm not an art director. Like, I don't, who am I? But I imagine so.
Now, when it comes down to I'll say you could do it towards like your professional work or personal work. Now, what kind of adversity you had to encounter when you create a new piece from your perspective?
So, what are like some of the hurdles to creating something new?
Well, it's like if you're trying to actually create an environment for a scene for a game, like what kind of mental block what mental block did you go through or have to go over just to go ahead and to create that concept art?
I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't say there's any like mental blocks. I would say, because most of the time you're given a brief anyway. Like your art, an art block is you don't know what to paint. Like you know what to paint. You've been given what to paint. So sort of, it's just the execution, I suppose. Maybe you kind of, sometimes I get like design blocks. Maybe it's like I have to design something that is very designy and there's a specific problem. And yeah, sometimes it's a little bit hard to figure it out, like this specific problem. This has to, lock into this, and it has to, I have to figure out like how that works or how it looks like. And at that point, sort of how you get over that is, I guess you do a lot of research. Before I start anything, I'm doing research, looking at Google, I'm looking at everything that I need to figure it out before I rarely just start something without looking at anything prior. Always I spend, let's say it takes me like 2 days to finish a painting or whatever. I spend like before I even start, I'm spending like an hour, 2 hours just looking and gathering references, images and stuff like that. So you're kind of figuring out in your head what you're going to be doing at that stage. So when you do start, it's hopefully relatively smooth. And that comes with experience, because at the beginning, it's less consistent. Once further into your career, you get way more consistent, and that is really hard to. That's like one of the hardest things, to be consistent. Like, you are confident and confidence. Sometimes when something's not going well, it's easy to just be like, oh my God, like this is wrong. Like, I have to start this again. Or like, this is a really hard design task. But what you get, and because I'm a freelancer actually, that's a whole other thing. So I work, mostly alone. Getting the confidence to be like, yes, like, all right, I know how to, like, I'll figure this out. I know how to do it. Just kind of keep going, and not to be like stewing into that, like, this is going to suck or whatever. So yeah, as you go through your career, you get way more consistent, less hurdles sort of do come up. And when you do, you kind of remember how you sort of solved things in the past, I guess, and you can kind of follow the process of something like that to get over it again. But trial and error, sometimes with some of those like big hurdles, it's like you try something, you're like, oh, it doesn't work, and you keep trying. Eventually you'll get something, So yeah, just keep at it, I guess.
Now, going back to the references part. Now, as a teacher, I usually stress to my class like the power of research and reference material. Now, how many reference material do you normally download as a starting point? Because sometimes people actually go ahead and download like 2 or 3 images. As a concept artist, or as an artist in general, how many reference pictures do you actually download to make sure that you actually got the concept right in order to create these concepts for the environments, for whatever title that you're working on or personal project you're doing?
So there's 2 different types of images that you're looking for. One is reference in terms of this is sort of what you want it to look like. But because I use a lot of photos in my work, I'm also looking up, trying to find photos which will help me complete the tasks that I'm going to be using and painting over at the same time. You get better at that, doing it at the same time. But like finding at least, in professional work, you are finding reference images just to look at, just to like get the feeling of what these things look like, what you have to design. But in professional work, normally the art director is giving you reference images, because this is that's sort of like kind of easy to pick out. It's like, I want it to look like this. I want it to look like this. Easy. And then let's say I'm starting a new a painting or whatever. It's a bit of a weird question. How many? Like it varies, because like sometimes you kind of get lucky and you find everything you need really quickly, and then sometimes you don't, and you're spending a lot more time in the research phase than you'd like to. But to finding like images that I need, and maybe like downloading, buying photo packs, just stuff on Google Images and like painting over them, and making sure to like paint over it a lot, you know. How many? I don't know. I couldn't give a number, man. I don't know. But there's definitely like, you kind of keep going, finding images that you're going to be using if you're using photos in your work. Just the amount that you need, that you'll need, because you're looking at the brief and you're figuring out as you're going. All right. And then personal work, that is a lot more, you gather your own reference. This is what I sort of want it to look like. And then you do the same thing, gathering images that you're going to be using. But actually sometimes as I'm going through an image and there's something that I haven't done in that research phase, then I'm kind of still semi-half looking at images as I'm painting. And it's like halfway through, it's like, oh, I need to design this. Keep using this example, a cabinet. Then I'm like, okay, go on to Google. I'm looking at cabinets, just 5 minutes, and I'm like, okay, yeah, something like this, and then I go back to the painting. Put it in.
Now, I would say, how do you feel about doing rotoscoping as far as an addition to your artwork? Because I know that people rotoscope a lot of scenes or environments in scenes, or when doing either a personal project or an actual project. Now, how do you actually fit that into your work as far as like another tool to add on to your work, or it's something you just don't do at all?
Yeah, I'm going to come clean, with you guys. I really don't know much about 3D, and I don't really even know what rotoscoping kind of is. I paint over 3D a lot, and I even do 3D, but it is not really big for me.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry if that disappoints some of you.
No worries. I mean, because sometimes
I'm gonna be honest, man.
Yeah, because I know that sometimes in many situations that people actually take like 2D environments and then pretty much pop it into as a backdrop for the 3D world in the 3D environment. So, and sometimes people actually pull that off. As far as the 2D part goes, it's like kind of combining the 2D with the 3D. So I was just trying to figure if you actually do that as well. If not, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm painting over 3D and stuff, I really don't like. I don't like personally. Like this is just aesthetically, I don't like it when you can tell where 3D is, or like if you can see it. That's just a personal taste. So I really try to remove it or like paint over it, whatever I do, as much as I can. Not that the other thing looks bad or anything. It's just how I like.
Okay.
Yeah. I like things to still look like, I don't know, like a human did it, like a painting a little bit. Sometimes, and I think sometimes, we lose that a little bit with 3D. Personally, yeah.
Last question before I let you go. Everyone has like a achievement, whether it's a personal or professional, as far as their main key victory. So I ask you, what is your key victory in life? No matter if it's personal or professional or both.
Getting in the industry just by itself is like one of the biggest victories. Because like after practicing for 3 years with nothing, no jobs, whatever, and then just like, I'm still practicing, but just getting into it, getting that first AAA gig, it's so difficult. And a lot of people don't make it. You know what I mean? Like you see a lot of people, maybe they just don't put the practice in or whatever it is, they have personal reasons, and they never sort of seem to get in there. Yeah, man. Like just being here, just getting into the game industry. I love games so much. Just being able to contribute to them is like a victory in itself. Yeah.
Okay. So again, Blake, thank you again for joining us on Victory 3D's Final Render. And as for you folks at home, we'll leave a link down in the description so we have like take a gander at Blake's work on ArtStation. So until then, we'll keep all things rendering. Thank you, Blake, for being us on the show, and we will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.